He woke in the upstairs apartment, face half stuck to a sun-faded cushion, skull full of cotton. For a second, it was just a regular bad morning. The kind he used to know. Too little sleep, too much thinking, not enough anything else. Did I get drunk and crash up here again? He croaked to no one. He took inventory the way you do when you're not ready for the real answers. No rattling empties, no hard ciders, no hard iced tea. Okay, where's the empty tequila? Why does my head hurt? He sat up, the room tilted like a slow boat. Feet on the floor, Hawk, feet on the floor. He said it the way a coach used to bark it at sports camp, ritual muscle memory to bully a body into listening. All you need is a little. His eyes caught the windowsill. The ashtray sat there, glass halo in the morning light. Only the light was wrong. Not electric, not humming, just the slow pulse of dawn spilling through dusty blinds, too colorful to be normal. He followed it upwards, squinting through the glass. Then it all came back in a single unkind second. The window was filled with a sky that shouldn't exist. Nebula color poured over the horizon like spilled paint, mountains sleeping beneath it like titans under a quilt. Memory hit him hard enough to ring. The prospector, the gold dust, the oath, Flora's curtsy, the garage door opening on a Hubble postcard. Elseway, he rubbed his face, muttering to the quiet. Right. Purgatory. This is my personal safe zone, he muttered. If waking up in a bed feels this rough, what's it going to be like when I wake up in my car again with the resupply every 7 days? He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes tracing the dust in the sunbeams. And if this already felt disorienting, what would it be like to wake up somewhere else, in another safe point, miles from here? The town, if the stories were true, was the biggest one for a long stretch. Most smaller outposts had folded into its orbit, people trading the quiet of safe zones for the illusion of community, whatever that meant here. He dropped into the old folding lawn chair anyway, searching for the thread of that first moment, how it started, when it felt real. He sparked the lighter and took a slow inhale. Smoke coiled upward, soft and gray. Did I die? Reincarnation? Reborn? Or maybe this is some weird time bubble? A slip? A dry laugh escaped. And somehow this is only day 2. I already gave away my little bit of comfort to the first soft-eyed woman who smiled at me. Flora, the girl who lived in a dirt shack the size of a tool shed and called it home, said it was just her until the old man came along, old prospector Phil, the man who swore loyalty to the land and claimed that if she'd been reborn here, others would follow. He said it like prophecy or bad poetry. He always said the next one born on this patch would be a gold nugget. Then he'd patted Hawk on the shoulder and said he'd been right, whatever that meant. A beat. Chivalry or pushover, Hawk, jury's still out. He exhaled, stood, and turned toward the open boxes. Halloween costumes, college leftovers, a pile of mismatched past lives waiting to be worn again. He hauled the suitcases onto the floor and cracked them open, then the box labeled college, the kind of handwriting that hadn't expected to outlive the tape holding it shut. He started building an outfit from 3 different lives. Vacation, out of season, dead-end job, and one Halloween he'd sworn never to mention again. Boots first. Real ones. Work boots with tread and history. Pants next. Thick, not too ragged, the kind that forgave you for kneeling in gravel. He dug through the pile until he found the shirt and actually laughed. Nurse Mystic and the Galactic Tournament Orchestra. The one-hit wonder still stuck in his head. It's not a new year. Your galactic calendar is wrong. He'd lost that shirt twice, and somehow it always found its way back, like a bad penny with a good chorus. Flannel over that. And finally, the newly acquired sheriff's hat, because life was short and irony was cheap. He looked at himself and smirked. Yeah, he muttered, half to the mirror, half to whatever gods were taking notes. Guess this'll do. He stood in front of the mirror, dusty, maybe judging. Hi, I'm Emerald Hawk, Hawk for short. He tried again, changing the tone. Hey there, partner. Name's Hawk. Then, because the hat demanded it, Hawk's the name. Smoke it till I squint my eyes is my game. He winced. Okay, that one's going in the trash. A laugh rose out of nowhere, dragging a memory with it. 4 kids in a window's glow, passing a little bravery in a circle. Giggles stacking up to the ceiling. They were probably younger than they should have been. That was the point of being that age. Chris, best friend, blood brother without paperwork, leaned back with that grin that always got them in trouble. I know your last name's Hawk, but that ain't why I call you that. You know why? He'd pointed, triumphant. 'Cause as soon as you get high, you get hawk eyes for the rest of the day. You look like you're trying to see a grain of sand downtown. All four of them had laughed until their ribs hurt and their eyes watered, and someone complained about oxygen theft. The room now was quiet enough to hear the past leave. Hawk touched the brim of the hat and looked out at the stitched horizon. Are you out here somewhere, Chris? He asked the mountains softly. A motorcycle ghost flickered in his mind, the way it used to sound when joy was louder than fear. Chris had crashed, fatally, the word that closes doors. Hawk hadn't ridden much since. He didn't ride today either. He just looked. The name had stuck after that, Hawk, so well he barely ever thought of the first one. Emerald. Mom was a bit eccentric, he muttered to a tie-dyed polo before tossing it back in the box. He'd worn it to picture day once. He looked back to the mirror. Flannel, dust, reflection. He squared the collar, rolled his shoulders. Boots, pants, shirt, flannel. A man-shaped promise. The Elseway was waking slow, edges of the day bleeding into color like an old film reel warming up. He patted his pockets for a lighter, for a list, for courage. Found 2 out of 3. All right, he told the window and the mountains beyond it. First trip to town. Let's go figure out the price of electricity and dignity. He headed down the stairs. Somewhere outside, something that might have been crickets, or might not, kept a patient click-click rhythm. The world hummed, expectant, like it had been waiting for him to put his feet on the floor. He rummaged through the trunk, half curious, half terrified at how neat it still was. Everything had respawned in exactly the places he'd left them, like some tidy, passive-aggressive house sitter. Okay, he muttered. Let's see what I'm worth today. He grabbed a laundry basket full of the odds and ends the apartment hoarded. A cracked travel mug, a broken umbrella that was more spirit than function, the kind of miscellany that tells you where someone has been more than where they're going. Then he went through the stuff that actually mattered. There was a 9mm Beretta in a belt holster, the sort of discreet, I'll never use this, but thanks, universe presence. In a t-shirt, it rode a little too obvious, the handle peeking like a bad fashion choice. In a jacket, it blended into background noise. He slid it deeper into the trunk, more out of habit than conviction. Hope to never need this, he said to himself. But if things get weird, nice to have a tool that doesn't involve shouting. There was a half-ounce of weed, wrapped in tin foil and tucked in a coffee tin. Practical, medicinal, and morally ambiguous. The bag of frozen burger patties had somehow stayed frozen, miracles of Elseway physics or someone's merciful inventory logic. A block of cheddar, eggs that suspiciously still looked viable, a loaf of bread and tortillas, things that would make a meal possible even if civilization decided to nap for a week. Shelf-stable comforts, canned soup, canned beans, instant mashed potatoes, peanut butter, rice and pasta, a jar of marinara pretending to be ambitious. Instant coffee, tea bags, small, legal miracles. A sleeve of saltines and a box of granola bars for emergency dignity. Extras sat like personality. 1 bottle of tequila for grief, celebration, or both. 2 six-packs of hard cider that could be traded or regretted depending on company. A bag of marshmallows and chocolate for the idea of s'mores and the memory of a niece he wasn't sure he had. Practical stuff tucked into corners. A roll of paper towels, a box of trash bags, duct tape, a first aid kit, batteries, a flashlight, and a half-burned pack of matches that felt like hope in a box. There was also the faint, stubborn reminder, somewhere in the crawl space, of a 12-gauge he'd meant to inventory properly, sometime. He hadn't touched it. He would check it later. Maybe. He zipped the bag shut, shouldered the basket, and looked out at the Elseway horizon one more time. The list felt like a truth teller. Everything you are, distilled into cans and fabric and small, hopeful tools. He smiled, half sad, half practical. Not bad, he said. Just the sort of amount that won't get you a castle, but also not enough to start a war. Then he pocketed the lighter, winked at the mountains, and Hawk zipped the bag shut and leaned back. Not bad, he said. Feels like I might have too much of one thing running around, though. A pause. The thought stuck. Unless the longer something's been here, the easier it breaks, or just disappears. He made a mental note. Ask about that. If anyone even knows. His eyes drifted to the nightstand, to the thing he hadn't thought about since yesterday. The phone. half charged, half useful, like a relic of some other species. He'd switched it off to save the battery, figuring he'd deal with it later. Later was apparently now. He thumbed it on. The screen lit, too bright, too alive, shapes forming like they wanted to be words but couldn't commit. Letters stretched and collapsed, lines bending until they looked like veins under glass. He squinted. Okay, yeah, that's still crazy. What in the stroke is going on here? No signal, no icons, just motion like the thing was breathing. He was about to shut it off when the flashlight flicked on by itself, the tiny LED stabbing the dark trunk like a divine joke. Ha, guess the flashlight works, he muttered, that, trying not to sound relieved. Then the light stuttered, turned blue for half a blink, and died. He dropped the phone into the trunk, the sound too loud in the quiet. Okay, yeah, nope, he said, scooping it back up, turning it off properly this time, and setting it down like it might explode from being offended. He shut the trunk. For a long second, he just stood there, the air thick and humming, like the Elseway was pretending not to watch him. He shook his head. Maybe it's not so bad to ease into this place, he said, more to the silence than himself. The silence didn't argue. The cart squeaked like an old grocery wheel, metal on cobblestone that wasn't there. Each turn of the wheel made the ground flicker, the stones forming just long enough to carry them forward before dissolving back into dust. Hawk had checked 100 times, leaning over like an engineer who didn't trust physics. Still there, still not there. The road built itself out of nothing, one guilty inch at a time. And if that wasn't crazy, Flora made the world bloom just by walking through it. Grass bent politely around her boots. Wildflowers and dandelions trailed behind every step. If she stood still too long, the weeds climbed her skirt like old friends, curling close until she moved again. Now she walked with purpose, deliberate, eyes fixed on the horizon, and the earth obeyed. If you listened close, her footsteps didn't sound like grass at all. They sounded like hardwood, steady, echoing, the rhythm of someone meant to walk inside. Morning light rolled over the Elseway in streaks of silver and violet, brushing their shadows long across the open field. The town shimmered ahead, a collage of history having a nervous breakdown. Hawk's boots scuffed the dirt, leaving behind faint trails of sawdust that vanished seconds later. He sighed, half to himself. Guess the Elseway's got a sense of humor. If anyone had ever lived anywhere, it was here. Igloos beside pyramids, Victorian mansions beside rust-bitten trailers, glass domes leaning against log cabins, A-frames, teepees, half-melted igloos still pretending to remember winter. A city built like a fever dream, someone playing city builder drunk and forgetting the delete button. They didn't carry much, just enough to trade without drawing stares. A box that looked more goodwill than treasure, mugs, shirts, canned soup, maybe a few batteries if luck felt generous. Philip pushed the cart, Flora walked close, eyes darting through the crowd, and Hawk trailed behind, hat pulled low, a man trying to look casual away. They cleared the last of the ridge, and the trees broke open like curtains drawn back on a secret. Below them, sprawled across the basin, was the city, not a town, a collection. Every style of living ever imagined had pulled up a chair and refused to leave. An igloo slouched beside a Victorian manor. A pyramid baked quietly in the same sun as a greenhouse dome. Log cabins leaned against glass cylinders that caught the light like prisms. Greek columns held up a gas station roof. A Gothic church shared a wall with a strip mall. Someone had even parked a row of RVs in front of what looked like a crumbling castle and called it a neighborhood. If anyone had ever lived anywhere, their ghost had found real estate here. The skyline wasn't tall. It was crowded. Like the world itself had been shuffled, and all the ideas of home fell into one place and called it enough. Flora slowed, her dress brushing the wildflowers that followed her. Her breath came out soft. I've never seen it from this high before, she said. Looks bigger every time. Philip shaded his eyes with one hand, his tone caught between pride and warning. Yep, that's Elseway City. Biggest respawn for miles. The kind of place where luck's got a half-life and names don't always mean the same thing twice. Hawk stared, unable to tell where architecture stopped and imagination started. A UFO-shaped diner hovered at the edge of the city limits, glinting like it wanted to take off again. Beyond it, a Ferris wheel turned so slowly it might have been powered by nostalgia alone. The wind carried faint music, too distant to place, too familiar to ignore. He couldn't tell if it was from a radio, a street performance theme, or something the Elseway itself was humming just for him. The cart squeaked forward again, wheels flashing their brief cobblestone glow. The horizon shimmered and the mismatched city breathed like something alive. All right, Hawk muttered under his breath. Guess it's time to see what civilization looks like when it stops pretending to make sense. Philip had a plan, or at least the confident tone of a man who believed plans existed. Now listen, he said, leaning close as they walked. I know a guy. Good fella. Won't make a fuss about new faces. Just say you're traveling through. That's it. Flora shot him a glare sharp enough to shave bark. That's not smart, Philip. He's new. People can tell. Her eyes flicked to Hawk, then away, to the shimmer far behind them where their land sat waiting, listening. Philip grunted, scratching his beard like it might hold better ideas. Yeah, maybe, but we still gotta slow play it. Let him learn the ropes before he trips over 'em. Build a little rapport before we ask for what we really need, boy. Hawk nudged the cart's squeaky wheel back in line. And what's that exactly? Philip's grin cracked through the dust. Propane, he said finally. Gotta have it for the generator. But we can't just stroll into town asking day one. Need to be the right kind of familiar first. Flora sighed, the sound halfway between patience and prophecy. Translation, Philip's scared someone will realize our patch of land actually matters. Every few years, someone floats the idea of turning it into a checkpoint. 5 main roads meet right there, and guess where the lines cross? Philip spat into the dirt, muttering, That fancy aristocrat with the monocle's been sniffing around again, trying to steal my honey hole. She ignored him, eyes on the horizon. They call it 5 points. Convenient, dangerous, or both, depending on who's keeping score. Hawk adjusted his hat against the violet sun. So, no big entrances. Got it. They crested a ridge, and the first real structure came into view, a low, wide building with a cracked concrete circle around it. The middle was open, except for a few rusted shapes that still hinted at speed. Is that? Hawk squinted. A go-kart track? Used to be, Philip said with a grin. Someone's been living there for years now. Good trader. Big fella. Tattoos like a road map. Used to run the bumper cars for tourist kids. You'll still see a few of those carts rolling around town if you keep your eyes peeled. He paused, tapping his temple with a wink. Then again, you're the last person I need to tell that. Vision like a hawk, eh? Mine's gone soft, but that's all right. Someone's always coming. The smell of oil and dust thickened as they reached the pit area. A corrugated door rattled halfway open, just enough to frame the man inside, arms like tree trunks, biker ink fading into old scars. He sat behind a trade counter welded from a go-kart chassis, grease-stained and proud of it. Route 66 signs covered the walls like armor. Behind him, an ancient map of America sagged from the nails, the words "You are here" circled in bleeding red marker, right over what had once been a small roadside town in another life. Morning, Philip said easily, tipping his hat. Brought a friend who might need a few things. The man's eyes traveled from Philip to Flora, then landed on Hawk and stayed there. New face, new problem. He said nothing, just leaned back and cracked a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Hawk felt his stomach flip, that quiet, knowing dread. The Elseway didn't need laws or guards. It already had rules, and everyone seemed to know when one was about to get tested. He leaned on the counter, pretending to study the biker's faded map of America, but something outside the window caught his eye. A food truck. Not a wagon or cobbled-together relic. This thing still had pride. 20 feet of metal and memory, half chrome, half rust, sun-bleached down the middle, parked crooked behind the chain-link fence of the track, and bolted to its back like trophies, 2 massive propane tanks, 100 pounds each, easy. Hawk's pulse stuttered. To anyone else, it was just scenery, part of the Elseway's endless clutter. To him, it was civilization, a flame with rules. He could see it already. Steady blue fire on a stovetop, a single bulb humming over a meal, heat that wasn't borrowed from wood. The nights here never dropped below 50, but cold had more to do with loneliness than temperature. Used sparingly, that fuel could last weeks, a little for cooking, a little for light, enough to feel human again. He almost smiled, then stopped himself. In the Elseway, noticing the wrong thing too fast was as good as claiming it. And once you claimed something, something noticed you back. He turned away, forcing his gaze toward the counter. Nice setup, he said, nodding at the row of bumper cars instead. His voice sounded steady, his heartbeat didn't. Behind him, a breeze crept through the cracked wall, carrying a scent like ozone and copper. Elseway's version of curiosity. He didn't look back, just mentally filed it away under someday. They left town with what Hawk generously called an even trade, junk for slightly better junk. A cutting board, a half-used pack of hand wipes, a bar of soap that smelled like lemon and rust. Big day, he muttered, dropping the haul into the cart. Philip grinned, one gold tooth catching the violet light. Progress is progress, even if it just makes your hands smell funny. They crested the ridge as twilight set the horizon on fire, a slow bruise of red and violet. Hawk was still stewing. He kicked a rock down the trail and finally said it. I still don't get why you pushed me out. I was just talking. Philip wagged a finger as they trudged down the trail. No, no, no. You were looking to make waves too fast, boy. Trust me, we go slow and steady. He jabbed his thumb toward the horizon. Besides, the bridges are too small for that fancy car of yours, assuming it's still got fuel. And those propane tanks you were eyeing? Way over 180 pounds between them. Hawk frowned. If they're full, maybe more than that. Philip's grin turned sly. Oh, I know. I already know about 'em. Been sitting there since before you got here. On the shop owner's reset day, that gas leaks out every time. Every damn time. He kicked a rock down the path. Needs a new regulator for one. Other tanks useless. Wrong valve type. It's a process, and let me tell you, while you can't kill folks in town, there ain't no rule against blowing yourself to smithereens. And that blast, same size as the ones I used to make Looking for Gold. He chuckled, a gravelly laugh swallowed by wind. Hawk didn't answer. He just followed the path, thoughts churning between logic and superstition. By the time they saw the valley again, the sun hung low, mid-afternoon sliding toward hunger hour. There it was, Hawk's garage, the small ranch house stitched to it, a trickling stream glittering beyond. The old man's campfire smoke rose in a thin curl, and Flora's poor excuse for a shelter, half rug, half roof, still leaned against the hill like it might apologize for existing. Philip stopped dead, crouched low, and did something that looked halfway between a stretch and a ritual. He bent forward, butt toward the camp, head tucked between his knees, squinting at the world upside down. See that? He muttered. Looks wrong. The whole area's off. I feel it in my bones. We're too low. Hawk blinked. Yeah, I'll take your word for it. Then the ground began to thud. A rhythm, steady, deliberate, impossible to mistake once you've heard it before. Flora stiffened instantly, arms crossing before the rider even appeared. Don't you dare, she hissed under her breath. A shimmer rippled across the horizon, and through it burst Sheriff Bill, full gallop, reins pulled tight, his coat snapping like a storm flag. He yanked the horse to a stop so close the animal's breath fogged against Hawk's Nurse Mystic and the Galactic Tournament Orchestra shirt. The wind carried that strange Elseway hum again, like a power line that couldn't decide which century it belonged to. The sky above churned in slow colors, clouds rippling between bruised violet and dull green, as if the whole horizon were exhaling. Hawk didn't flinch, but his heart did a quiet backflip. Flora folded her arms tighter. That was on purpose. Sheriff Bill reined in his horse, the smirk already loading. Hey now, not everyone can control their steed all the time. He tilted his head, grin sharpening. You know what it's like to lose control sometimes, don't you? For half a heartbeat, Hawk was somewhere else. Chrome, asphalt, sirens, twisted metal. Chris's bike skidding sideways across the highway, that hollow beat after a crash when silence was louder than the scream. Bill's voice yanked him back. Good thing about a fast ride, though, a sturdy steed'll take you anywhere worth going. He patted his horse's neck, proud as a man who'd just written scripture. Shame you don't seem to have one, old hoof-hearted Daisy. Here's the only racer in town. Flora muttered. Hoof-hearted Daisy. You named her that on purpose. Bill winked. She earned it. And what about you, stranger? Got yourself a ride or just big talk? Hawk kept his voice level, eyes glinting. Oh, I've got one. I just call it Dream. Bill barked a laugh. Dream, huh? That a joke? Ain't seen you with a horse, a cart, or even a half-decent wheelbarrow. He leaned forward, confidence thick enough to smell. Tell you what, since you're so sure of your dream, let's make it interesting. You beat me to the old 5 point sign. You get your hat back. I win, I keep it, and you buy the next round of that fancy soap you've been trading. Flora sighed, arms crossing tighter. You sure you want to do that, Bill? Bill grinned wider. Lady, I was born for bad bets. Hawk tilted his head, almost smiling. Fine by me, just don't cry about it later. Philip groaned from his folding chair. First one past my sign. Straight shot down the ridge and back. Don't die, either of you. I'm too old to bury fools again. Bill tugged the reins, Daisy pawed at the dirt, ready. On my mark, city boy. Hawk took a few steps toward the garage. Sure thing. Bill smirked. Ain't no use hiding, partner. You can't talk your way out of this one. From inside came the soft scrape of metal, a low mechanical cough. Then a sound the Elseway hadn't heard in a long, long time, an engine clearing its throat. Flora's lips twitched. Oh, Bill, you might want to hold on to something. The tarp peeled back, dust spiraling into the bruised sky. Chrome caught the nebula light, flaring like lightning bottled in steel. Hawk straddled the bike, dream, and slipped on his yellow safety glasses. He twisted the throttle once, the engine's growl swallowing the silence. Bill, he said, voice steady, you might want to get that head start you bragged about. Bill's smirk faltered, his horse sidestepping nervously. What in the Elseway? The roar drowned him out. Gravel leapt, dust exploded, and Hawk shot forward down the ridge like the ground itself was helping him. For one impossible second, the dirt road turned to blacktop, faded yellow lines flashing beneath him, before splintering back into gravel, the illusion breaking like glass. Hawk laughed into the wind. Guess even the ground plays along here. He opened the throttle wider. Dust and light blurred into one long streak behind him. He wasn't chasing anyone. He wasn't running either. For the first time since waking up in the Elseway, he was just moving. And for a few perfect laps between two worlds, that was enough. The race had ended hours ago, but the dust hadn't figured that out yet. It clung to everything. The horse, the bike, the laughter. Bill's mare stood steaming by the hitch post, head low, foam drying on her neck. Hawk's motorcycle ticked as it cooled, tiny pings echoing into the Elseway night. Even the sky looked spent, green-blue swirls drifting across the stars like oil on water. A small fire snapped in the pit. Philip pretended he hadn't rooted for anyone, which made him the biggest liar in the circle. One half-buried bottle of tequila gleamed amber in the dirt between them. Bill broke the quiet first. Now, in my defense, he said, pointing at Philip, he said race. He didn't say what kind. Philip threw up both hands. Hey, I just confirmed the terms. Hawk tried to hide his grin behind his sleeve. Flora didn't bother. You bet against a motorized steed, Sheriff, she said. That's not ungodly, just unwise. Bill groaned, cheeks glowing from firelight and shame. His eyes kept sneaking toward his old hat perched on Hawk's head, crooked like it had always lived there. Reckon a man ought to win back what's his, he muttered. How was I supposed to know he wasn't bluffing? Hawk slid the tequila across the dirt. Reckon he ought to drink first. Best way to learn a man. The bottle made slow rounds, no glasses, just swigs and stories. Each swallow stripped another layer of Bill's pride. By the time it reached Flora, she only touched her fingertip to the rim, polite, not sinful. The fire cracked again. Silence filled the spaces between. Bill sighed. Truth is, I started those 5-point races to keep order, but mostly to feel alive. Philip poked the coals with a stick. Still beats the go-kart track. I've been rebuilding one just to feel useful again. Flora smiled faintly like she'd heard that before. In this world or another. Bill tipped the bottle toward Hawk. Guess I just don't like losing to engines I don't understand. Hawk took a sip, then set the bottle down. Guess I don't like winning through deception. The Elseway hummed, that low glass underwater vibration that always came when someone spoke a true thing. Bill leaned forward. So what now, champion? You keep the badge too? Hawk untied the shoelace from under his chin and set the sheriff's hat gently in Bill's lap. There's nah, he said softly. Worth more for the look on your face when I took off. Bill stared, then laughed, loud and real. You still don't know how to ride proper. Hawk smirked. You looked like you were about to need loaner pants when I hit the throttle. Bill chuckled, shaking his head. You ever hear of that woolly rabbit gang? The ones with bikes that chew dirt into ramps? He grinned. They'd recruit you in a heartbeat. Flora rolled her eyes. Boys and their horsepower. Hawk rummaged through his pack. You ever had s'mores? They all blinked. He pulled out marshmallows, chocolate, and a half-crushed sleeve of graham crackers, all scavenged from his inventory box. Bill squinted. You mean city food? Camp food. Hawk said, skewering a marshmallow. You'll see. The first bite shut Bill up fast. Philip hummed approval. Sweet sin, that's alchemy. The Elseway breeze carried sparks upward, slow, lazy fireflies against the nebulous sky. 3 silhouettes and 1 ghost of a flame. A bottle half empty. Laughter, small but alive. Above them, the horizon pulsed once. A single breath through the stars, as if the world had taken note of them. Hawk leaned back, staring into the glow. Guess we'll just have to teach each other, he said. Bill tipped his hat. How to ride. Yeah, Hawk said. And how to stay on. The fire popped. Fade out. End of episode 2. Like and subscribe before the Elseway resets.